Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jams and Tea podcast, where we spin the jams and spill the tea. And today, Jen and I are here to talk about two brand new pop records. As a matter of fact, we are going to be talking about the latest record from one Miss Kelsey Lu. New album, first in 5 years, as a matter of fact, So Help Me God, as well as one of the banner releases of the year thus far for sure, that being Olivia Rodrigo's third album, You Seem Pretty Sad for a Girl in Love. But first, we're going to talk about one Miss Kelsey Lu. And this was something that was not immediately on my radar, and I want to give a shout out to longtime friend of the channel, Andres, for putting this on my radar. Who, like, dude is just tapped the fuck in with all music releases. Dude runs our basic
If you're in our
New Music
Discord
Friday and
server,
Discord and good shit.
if you're in our Discord server, Andre is the guy who's always posting those new Music Friday lists that I love so much that keep me like on the pulse of
hmm
everything. So shout
And
out to Andre.
And every once in a while, he'll throw out something where it's just like, yo, you should check this out. And it always goes to the top of my list. This being one of those things, especially when I looked up who Kelsey Lu actually even was. First of all, did not know that they were non binary. Completely missed me. Also, did not know that Kelsey is, in fact, a very talented cellist who has worked with many musicians, played on many different records, most notably, for me anyway, being playing cello on Kalela's album Take Me Apart in the 2010s. That is one of my favorite albums of all time, and honestly, Kelsey is not an insignificant reason as to why that is. Her contributions on there are stellar. And it's actually been a little while since Kelsey has dropped anything. And this has to do with lots of just them being busy, but also the fact that a lot of this album is preoccupied with some very, very troubling themes, particularly involving that of grief. And also just mourning relationships and mourning, gosh, everything. Mourning is just kind of the sort of overarching theme of the record to me. And I put this on, and I had almost no idea what to expect beyond just what I immediately was able to absorb from, say, their Rate Your Music page. And oh, wow, if this isn't one of the most beautiful albums released this year. Oh, man, this thing is a jazzy, demure, atmospheric art pop album that is absolutely wonderful. Not only is Kelsey a phenomenal cellist, they are an incredible vocalist. You are going to hear some of the best vocal performances of the entire year on this because the dexterity on display here, I mean, to call it Björk-esque kind of sells it short, but honestly, this is for all of the Björk fans out there. So I came into this a little familiar with some stuff, but still is kind of a relative newbie. How did this play for you, Jen? I don't really know how much of an art pop head you are.
I'm not really. Um, the last thing I would say that I listened to that was anything like this was the Wise Blood album that
Yeah,
I guested on that episode a couple years ago where we talked about the last Wise Blood record.
terrific album.
And yeah, good album. That's the last time I've ever really listened to something like this. I'm not huge into the art pop chamber scene, I guess I would say. But I immediately became very interested in Kelsey's oeuvre because they've also done a lot of film score stuff. They're a classically trained musician from childhood, and that always produces really interesting albums when you have somebody like that who wants to go on their own and not just make like, an instrumental orchestral thing, but make a vocal pop album. What does that
Mhm.
end up sounding like? And I also couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at some of the production credits on this. Did you know Antonov was on this album?
I checked yesterday and I was like, this is the best sounding shit Jack Antonoff's name has been on in a hot fucking minute because this album sounds amazing.
Well, and they're also assisted by Eve Rothman,
Hmm.
who worked on Gospel for a New Century. My
Which
one of the great albums of the 2020s, I've Toomer's Gospel for a New Century.
Jen and I are like, we are the biggest Eve Toomer fans, I think, in our circle. So this is a real meeting of the minds here.
And so when I sit back and I press play on this, I'm immediately blanketed with this lush, gorgeous arrangement on
Reaper,
the
man.
first song, Reaper. Yeah, I love the three big movement structure that this song has, which really gets you inundated into what the flow of this album is going to be because Kelsey has a lot of big swings across all these tracks. And so what you're getting on Reaper starts as what seems to me very classic art pop chamber stuff.
Oh yeah.
Love the vocals, love this creeping guitar. But then you get into this really stark second movement, and then you get this really low drum machine in the
Mm.
mix with this sax in the back that comes in on the third. And then you
Ah,
realize you're listening to somebody who's not just wanting to do like classic chamber, how do you say her name? Laufey,
yeah, 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 yeah.
stuff like that. But then by the time you get to the end of this song, you realize that Kelsey has a lot more ambition with layering in more avant-garde stylings into these art pop song structures. And every movement on this song, Reaper, is completely vocally and structurally distinct while still feeling like lyrically the piece all coheres. And this album is constructed around songs that have these big emotional vague sentiments like the idea of burning desire on the song Portrait of a Lady on Fire, just that little, the
Amazing.
idea of burning desire being this lyrical through point that I feel like defines so much of this record is feeling overcome with desire,
Yeah.
overcome with this just need for sensation, which segues nicely into Running to Pain, which is where I feel like this album gets its most lyrically direct
Yep.
in this idea that Kelsey is just there's a term for this, a sensation seeking, right? Just
Hmm.
just reaching for any kind of new, big, bold stimuli to experience. And that's just kind of a personality type that
Hmm.
people can have. And Kelsey definitely is that kind of person. And I love thinking about that in terms of how this album is constructed. The idea of going through so many different aesthetic directions to attempt to create some kind of through line and create consistent thematics and the idea of wandering between different sounds and different sonic ideas, like the way that this album often flirts with different kinds of percussion and more digital break beats and more digital drum machines, or these skittering, oscillating, reverberating string sections that move in and out of these songs that give it a more modern, avant-garde, but also mellow feel to
Yeah.
it. Where whenever you're listening to a break beat or a drum machine on this record, you know you're about to get some of the most melancholy stuff that Kelsey can produce. It's a really interesting clash where the more synthetic this album sounds, the more lyrically mellow it's about to get, which I think is a really interesting combination of sonics. So I mean, what did you think about this? Because are you familiar with Kelsey's previous record? Because I'm not, and so this is me coming in with this is all the context that I have is what we get on So Help Me God.
I've listened to a little bit of her previous stuff, not in its entirety. I just wanted to go back to just sort of, see what the precedent even was. And specifically, I checked out their song Due West, which is, I mean, like, if you're at all into this album and for whatever reason you haven't checked out the previous music, wow, please go and check that out because it is a stunner. This is very much in keeping with, I think, the style of her previous music, but maybe not the specific aesthetic because I think that I'll have to talk about this in a mildly kind of esoteric way, but the songwriting and song construction on this album kind of makes me feel like the writing approach here feels less like I'm going to write a song about this and far more I'm going to thread the needle of the topics that are relevant to me into this core idea for a song. And I know that that might sound kind of like you just said the same thing twice, but it's kind of in reverse. It's kind of the way that these songs feel like they are put together is way more abstract than I feel like people might typically be used to. And even in the realm of art pop, is that some of these are just deeply disarming. But that's the thing is that I kind of feel like this album's strength is in how it continuously disarms you. In fact, I think Portrait of a Lady on Fire is a really interesting focal point to look at because the burning desire being spoken about on this there's one little lyrical idea where they wonder about the interiority of the person who is the source of their desire. And they just simply ask the question, do you ever get like this, I wonder? And I loved thinking about that just because, when you're talking about things like, oh, I don't know, like since, things like obsession have been on the mind lately. That's another thing I'm probably going to bring up when we talk about the next album, as a matter of fact. But there's these particular ideas about interiority and the sort of lack of ability to make yourself known to someone else despite the intimacy that you share with them. Like wondering if the object of your desire also possesses that same desire for you. I mean, I really kind of dug into just that one lyrical idea, and I was just like, that is kind of a source of insecurity that I do relate to, where it's just like, maybe you two want each other, but like, how can you be sure of how much? And in an age where intimacy is an increasingly scarce resource, I kind of feel like this song is getting at something that's particularly relevant these days. And I mean, Running to Pain is another moment that I found really, really interesting on here, especially because musically it's so commanding. Like it comes after these three songs that are, I would hardly call them sedate, but the chamberish aesthetic of them is very just sort of ornamental. And then Running to Pain feels modern in its sensibilities. It feels very strange in how like fast-paced it is compared to everything that comes before it. But I kind of think it needs to be in order to make its point because Running to Pain, as the kind of title implies, is that this album is all about seeking sensation. And it doesn't even necessarily mean sensation that is good or appealing. It is merely stimuli. I think this album overridingly is about the idea of recognizing how stimuli affects you and everyone else. And just as somebody who, struggles with like I have a sensory processing disorder thing going on, so like whenever music talks about this specifically, I just immediately get on the wavelength. And I completely understand just the idea of seeking sensation just to feel something, just to like sort of settle that disquiet inside of you. It's a very, very specific, very neurospicy kind of set of themes that are on here that I found really, really interesting to sort of unpack. And there's also just like there's so much variety when it comes to what you're actually getting on here. Like American Sonnet, for instance, which is just like this bitch is bjorking really hard. Like this sounds like it came off of fucking homogenic, the vocal stylings. Hell, it even kind of sounds like some parts that are on Fosora, for instance. But like I was really into that, and it was like, it's one of those things where Björk is sort of the art pop goddess, so everybody models themselves after her. So it's kind of nice to hear something that's only partially inspired by something like that. But honestly, the name I kept coming back to over and over again, which explains my affinity for this, is Joanna Newsom, who also has a very similarly strange, dexterous, almost like alien vocal presence about them, and I feel like that's also here. But man, there are also moments like cutting off the head of a ghost where we're talking about what you have to do in order to move on, what you have to do in order to move past the stimuli that you receive from someone can be such a vital part of them. And then once that's gone, you are deprived in a different way. Like physical deprivation is so much more than just, oh, I can't have sex with this person anymore. Like it is like sexual sort of liberation is definitely baked into the DNA of this album, but it's also something that, it's something that you kind of got to get a little bit thornier with just by merit of the fact that it is sort of a dense, kind of strange topic to even indulge in, and people are made uncomfortable by these things. So they might be a little like, what? I don't know. But like, again, as somebody who likes to engage with these topics, I find Kelsey's musings on them to be fascinating. I think she is an incredibly talented writer who like just really knows how to construct a song around its idea. Like art pop as a thing, like it's not about uniformity or aesthetics in the exact same way that normal pop music is, where you want to go for something that is a bit easy to understand on some level. You want people to get it. Art pop to me is about taking that a step further and throwing you for a loop, being a little bit more progressive, being a little bit more challenging. And this to me is challenging in all of the right ways. And in fact, it kind of, in a way, because it is a challenging record that makes you have to interrogate it, it is completely in concert with its themes of having to do that with people in your life and not albums. So you get a kind of uniformity here with the way that Kelsey talks about their own experiences and the way that you engage with Kelsey's music. And I found that to be a remarkably fascinating wavelength to finally get on.
Yeah, and I think that by dealing in the abstract so much in terms of discussing how you get past this kind of dependency while also displaying this just uniform reliance on the stimuli that that person gave you. It makes cutting off the head of a ghost and that big swing of a hook in that chorus feels
Hmm.
so monumental to listen to, especially after Better Than That, which gets so like stuck in these little vocal loops. I love the that little refrain of like, "What's better than this? What's better than
Ah,
this?"
that's such a good moment. I love that.
And I loved the way that this album was able to, again, trickle in these kind of inhuman moments of instrumentation to make the overall aesthetic of the thing a little bit more challenging. Because I loved the little slowly crescendoing club beat that leads into 852, and I loved
What an
little
unexpected moment.
the little bit of industrial noise again on American Sonnet, the little bit of industrial noise that comes up when she mentions like shadows reaching through time, as if
Oh,
the personification of that very concept has just like crept into the mix of the song. And I honestly wish that there was more of that. I wish that there was more of the industrial electronic avant-garde styling on this, especially when the songs that lean on that the most are, I think it's,
strong
well,
stuff.
not I think it's its shortest moments, and I wish it could have gone on a little bit longer. Like I wish I had a little bit more of 852. I wish I
Mhm.
had a little bit more of What Can I Do? Because there in the album's biggest moments of dynamism, I was like, I'm really getting this now. And those are where it's most flighty, which
Mhm.
is a little bit disappointing. But I love the go for broke classical arrangement moments on this. But I also love the more rock influenced stuff, like the bass on Cutting on the Head of a Ghost, or
Oh,
again the club stuff on 852. The way that the guitar is arranged on Only the Lonely with those breakbeat drums underneath it, I think is all really great. And so I love the dynamism of this record, and that's the thing that I value in a lot of my music. And I really appreciated that Kelsey has been able to lean into that because that's what I think was missing on stuff like The Wise Blood. That's just stuff
mhm,
that I didn't connect with as much. And I got a lot out of that on this. And I love the way that those sprinklings of the modern, the mechanical, the synthetic get at this kind of need for moving forward to be something that has to be man-made. In a weird sort of way, this album's most classical moments portray Kelsey being the most overwhelmed with their psyche. And so I
mhm.
think it's interesting that the synthetic parts of this album represent thematically the most direct, intense action that Kelsey is taking. I think it's a really interesting sonic aesthetic concept that this album has that I wish it leaned into a little bit more. But I overall still really, really, really enjoyed this record.
I honestly, I can completely understand that just because this is an album that's full of big swings. It's just different kinds of big swings. And this is an album kind or genre kind that doesn't always blend these things in the way that this album does. So there is a chance of it being kind of hit and miss with you. I will say, I hope that Kelsey does explore exactly the things that you want them to kind of build on here because I do think that those are the most exciting parts of this record. However, I do also think that the flow and energy of this record is so deliberate and so intentional that it does kind of offset the more innovative moments for me of just reliably solid construction that is still here. It's just in a way that you might not be used to. This is the kind of album we don't often get, and it's from a scene and an artist that's a lot smaller than it should be, if you ask me anyway, for what we're actually getting here. Because I mean, this is one of the best sounding albums of the year. There's no question about that to me.
Yeah.
Like this definitely needs a lot more attention, but I'm almost like this is the kind of album where I'm happy that it will probably alienate a lot of people that I recommend it to because it takes those big risks. And art pop is a genre that like it kind of flits back and forth, you know, like some people who kind of really excel in the art pop scene do it because they do it within very established aesthetics that are nonetheless more adventurous than typical pop music, but are still very much within a certain rail of expectations that you know kind of what you're getting. But this is an album that understands that it wants to push boundaries. It wants to kind of get under your skin. And honestly, so help me God, very much did get under my skin, in the best possible of ways. It is a deeply eccentric album in a lot of ways, and that is the exact reason why I highly recommend that you give this a listen, because frankly, you won't hear anything else like it all year, and you also won't hear these topics dissected the way that they're dissected on here by anybody else this year. So if you're an art pop head, if you're a chamber pop head, or even if you just kind of think that this sounds interesting, I implore you, this is a talent to watch. Like, I'm gonna be listening to Kelsey's old music just to get myself familiar, and I now hope that it also does not take her another half of a decade to release this record. But if it does, I'll be patient and wait if it's this good. I don't care.
Yeah.
Cool.
So big thumbs up for Kelsey Lu.
Big thumbs up for Kelsey Lu. And now we are going to graduate over to Olivia Rodrigo. You seem pretty sad for a girl so in love. So earlier this year, we had a video where we talked about anticipated releases that were going to come out this year. And Olivia was just one of those names that we threw out there. And it wasn't in this video, but like just throughout the last couple of months, I've been a lot more familiar with your music taste and what have you. But I think that of the new guard of pop girlies, Jen and I'm fairly certain, are in the Billie Eilish camp. of the that's kind of our present favorite, but like, we still enjoy things like Sabrina's album from last year we really enjoyed. We're big fans of Chappell Roan. Can't quite put her in the same league as everybody else yet just because she only has the one record. But, also Olivia very much amongst those of her peers. And I'm going to pass the baton off to you, Jen, just because my feelings on Olivia's past music are well documented on here, is because we mentioned Sour when it came out. I was one of the two people that was actually like, hey, I know this is kind of a throwback and it's a bit of basic post Disney girl pop album, but I think there's something here. And then I was proven so correct with Guts. I feel like just very, very much so. Like that was an album where not only I was rapturous about it, everybody on the podcast was rapturous about it. We will still tell you that Guts is one of the best albums that came out that year and one of the best pop albums that has been released in this specific scene. That being said, I listened to this album this week.
Oh boy.
I might have to move my flag to a different camp.
So I, like you, was an immense fan of Guts when it came out. That record was just an immediate gonna be a year favorite because what I saw happen when Guts came out and when I felt myself listening to it, I was like, I feel like I'm watching somebody like grow
Evolve.
into their artistic spirit in
Uh-huh.
front of my eyes. And it was a
Amen.
rapturous thing to see on Guts, just because that album is so much fun
Oh
right
my
from the
God,
jump.
yes.
And Olivia's pop punk influences on those first two records did a lot for me to set her apart from her contemporaries. Like even on
Ditto.
Sour, which I like you don't like as much as Guts, but I still like quite a bit.
Hmm.
The pop punk stuff on that album is what kept me coming back. And
Absolutely.
Guts leaning even more into the pop punk influences that she has
Hmm.
was great for me because my favorite moments on that album are songs like All American Bitch, Get Him Back. But I also
Came back
do
so
really like Olivia as a balladeer. Like I
yes.
love Lacey, I love Making the Bed, I love Pretty
Driver's
Isn't
License
Pretty.
is a great song.
Huh?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Overplayed though it
driver's
might be.
license is like just alchemically correct. Like at some point
When
you've
that
spent enough
song
time
blew up
listening to
and
pop
people were like,
music.
I don't know about this. I was just like, look, guys, I don't know what to tell you. It's post-COVID. Hits are hits now. We just kind of have to roll with it. Even if it's a fucking insanely sad dirge written by a teenage girl, it's great. I don't know what
That
you want
was
me to
really
say.
like the first post-COVID, or not even post-COVID. It was during COVID.
Yeah, it was it and honestly like I feel very vindicated by the sort of modern pop girly scene is because I was also in on the ground floor with Billy as well ever since When We Fall Asleep is that was an album that came out and I don't know if people remember this but the music press and critics and music nerds fucking hated that album.
I was
They
gonna say Fantano's
hated it.
positive review of that album was like skewing far from the crowd.
And that was one of the albums that year that I just kept coming back to over and over again. And I had a very similar experience with Sour. And I mean, honestly, I still go back to songs like Brutal and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, this kicks, man. I don't know. Like this, there is something that separates Olivia from her contemporaries, that pop punk influence, but also there is a kind of freewheeling embrace of one's own cringe that I find I don't want to say like artistically brave, but I do admire on a level that is just like the what makes pop stars different now, at least the new guard of pop stars from where they were maybe 20 years ago, is that you have to embrace vulnerability almost wholeheartedly. Pop stars used to be this thing. It was about projecting divinity. Like, pop stars used to be Britney Spears and Beyonce. Pop stars used to be deities to people. Now it's all about the demystification of the deity. It is all about taking the angel and knocking them off and then taking away their halo and
Yeah, it's like
seeing what happens after.
we still like it when people make like big, beautiful swing for the rafters pop music, but we're also just way more conscious of the fact that there's a person underneath the veneer, and
And an exploited
we like
person.
learning who that person is.
And
Yeah, and
Olivia has been very like forward facing, like even since Sour, the fact that she's just like, I am being packaged as a product, not necessarily fully like, and it's not, and it's partially against my will. But that acknowledgement to me is that it's just like that means I feel like Olivia Rodrigo wants to stay because that's not something that someone who does not want to make music is going to make a point of doing. Like the other six of one, half a dozen of the other Disney pop starlets that graduate from that and then try to do the pop music thing for a while. Like that's happened with like 90 of them, and they have all gone. They have passed. They have we do not remember them anymore. Does anybody remember that Debbie Ryan tried to do that? Because I sure do. But now we're here, and what's interesting is that we seem to have Olivia for the first time, like really going out of like pop punk, you could say, is something that she included in her previous sound as being like, oh, this is what made her unique. But it's still not a million miles away from the pop that she was already making. Like, it's very Hayley Williams derivative, that kind of thing. In fact, when I listen to Olivia, Hayley Williams is mostly who I'm thinking of in a positive way. But as of sort of the last record, Olivia Rodrigo has toured with people like Robert Smith of The Cure. And, Robert's been making the rounds, just sort of like appearing on different pop albums and pop artists' songs and what have you. And for when I saw the track list of this, when it has songs like The Cure and also a song featuring Robert Smith, I was like, okay, I see how we can definitely get along lyrically because the sort of, frazzled young person with way too many emotions, like that's what The Cure is for. That's Olivia's wheelhouse. I get it, but like stylistically, from a sonic standpoint, is that even going to carry over? Because I mean, like, I'm not expecting this fucking 23-year-old to come out here and make an album that sounds like The Cure.
unless
Unless they came
so
and made an album that sounded like The
I
Cure.
loved hearing Olivia talk about how she feels too old to do pop punk anymore. It's just so funny.
It made me feel
But
like my insides were dust.
we substitute that for new wave, which is what this album is all about. There's so many classic, like Joy Division style, Cure style guitar tones on this record.
Deep, watery guitar tones, man. My favorite sound in the fucking universe.
But we're not losing any of Olivia's unique panache as a very stage-friendly performer. Olivia likes doing a bit every
Mm-hmm.
once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Very
And that's what makes
theatrical.
like songs like Bad Idea Right
Mm-hmm.
is such a good song because that's a song about doing several bits back to
Yes.
back.
It is
And
a song that is structured around its bits.
yeah. And so what we get on here is a pop album about being so wrapped up in your own melancholy that the only thing that you can do is just start making an ass of yourself about it. And I love that self-consciousness. It makes for a very interesting listening experience. And I love how deeply autobiographical she can get in the lyrics of songs like Drop Dead, while also having these just earworm grand gestures towards the idea of being a modern young person in love, while also being able to establish her bona fides very well with this great line about how I hope he understands just like heaven, just the same way that I do. And I hope he knows why I think of him when I listen to
It's
just like
I
heaven.
the moment I knew this album had me is that lyric on Drop Dead, which is you know all the words to Just Like Heaven, and I know the guy who wrote the song. And it's like, oh, okay, all right. We're actually like mining ourselves a little bit more in like a less vague way, in like a way that is unmistakably Olivia Rodrigo. And I clued into the fact that I like this album. Let me tell you how much. I can't believe that the girl from Bizarre is responsible for my current album of the year. Because, listen, this is an incredible record. I was stunned by how much I fucking love this thing. From Drop Dead, the like once she drops the like an angel in Versailles line, I was like, okay, all right, we're operating on a new level here. And
Yeah.
this album's slighter moments, this album's less substantial moments are still so creative, so out there, so fascinating and enjoyable to me that it doesn't necessarily matter that they are sandwiched between the album's more substantial moments, the more barn burner moments. But I think that all of the DNA of this record is completely necessary to make its point. And I think that the strength at the end of the day, because this album has many strengths, I do think is the writing. I was more impressed with the writing on this album than I have been in most records this year. And it was because with multiple listens, it just becomes more and more obvious how in denial Olivia is and how well she signposts all of the directions that this takes. Because, structurally speaking, this is about realizing that you are in a relationship with someone who you don't want to be in a relationship with. Except because of the progress that she's made maturing on albums like Guts, she views sort of coming out the other side. She's just like, oh, well, I don't have to deal with that anymore. I've dealt with my childish emotions, and now I'm an adult. I'm drinking cranberry vodkas, and I have standards now, and I'm with this person who's sensitive and cool. And then you slowly start listening to this, and there are little tiny hints in all of these songs, really smart double meanings, really, really interesting stanzas that you can unpack and be like, oh, okay, maybe not all is well in paradise
I think my
for Olivia.
favorite one on the early tracks, because I ended up writing this down. You should feel how I feel when somebody says your name on Stupid Song. And I was
Oh,
just like,
God.
oh, you think about that just a little bit longer, and it becomes this great double entendre of the like, how can you not see how much, reverence I have for you? And as I was listening to it, I wrote down, this is her best ballad. That is not true. Because
I understand the inclination to say so though, because like Drop Dead is this insanely maximalist song that is just like Dan Nigro is the producer for Olivia that has been like basically working on her with her sound since the beginning. And I was a little bit worried just because knowing that this was going to be such a genre sound shift and then she was keeping the same producer, I was like, are you gonna kind of half-ass it? But to me, I really see nothing but full-throated commitment to this album's sound because there's so much of it that is blocky and bright and danceable that sounds like, I mean, yeah, it sounds like Joy Division and The Cure sometimes, and it sounds like New Order other times. And in fact, I would say that the brighter post-punk is what this tends to steer towards. On maybe my favorite song on here, I'm really having a fucking hard time picking what my favorite song is because Drop Dead is this great, again, like maximalist, forward-facing declaration of what this album is. And then you go into Stupid Song immediately afterwards, which is this unbelievable anthem. Holy fuck. Not only is it a clever, interesting, fun pop song, it also gets at the heart of just like, it's not even about like the idea of the stupid song. Olivia's sort of lyrical point in this is that there's no song that could possibly exist that could relay how I truly feel about you. Except if you look a little bit deeper at these lyrics, I don't think she's actually saying that. What she's saying instead is, I love you more than any song I could write about you. And then this album starts to really just kind of unlock from then on. Maggots for Brains is maybe my favorite song on here because it starts with the wow down bam bam bam
oh
bam
yeah,
bam bam.
classic new wave
Ooh.
guitar riff that
Oh,
just sets the mood so perfectly. And I
oh.
love, and this is where this gets introduced more explicitly, this album's lyrical themes of sickness, which I find
Mm-hmm.
so fascinating. Oh
Yeah.
man, the idea of the hopeless romantic as a like diagnosis
Yes, it is a
is
mental illness in this album's eyes.
it's an extremely lyrically rich idea because it lets you get playful with it like this song is because I mean I've got maggots for brains is just a funny thing to say, but it's
It's
also
very weird. It's a weird song conceit.
yeah, it's also a thing that you say when you're so far removed from any concrete understanding of reality that you don't know what to do anymore. Uh,
It is a song about being on autopilot. And honestly, like as somebody who has to constantly oscillate their own brain to like make the world make sense. Like, I find myself feeling like I am putting myself in autopilot more and more these days. And I find the just the notion, the way she describes it, is just being a zombie in your own body. I find fascinating, and I find it very humorous and macabre. Like, nobody has quite this strange of a sense of humor as she does. Like, the real strength of Olivia Rodrigo as a songwriter is that she is a dyed-in-the-wool feeder kid. Like, if there is a way that she can introduce like a little way to make a hook more interesting, even if it's not like strictly more musically compelling, if she can make it more memorable, she will. And that's, I kind of think, the secret sauce of the album is that every single moment on here just feels so well realized. It feels like it came from a really tight curation of these tracks, and the flow of everything from like, it's so key that you nail this. Again, the deterioration of a relationship is not a new thing for an album to be about, but it does mean that people have been doing it for a long time, and if you want to do that, you have to do it very well. In fact, people like Robert Smith have kind of made their name off of doing that. Hey, what's The Cure's most famous album called? Disintegration. And so we have these songs on here like Honeybee, which slow things down, and we see her just kind of very sweetly examine their relationship when when the brakes are put on it a little bit more, when you can stop to smell the roses, as it were. But even then, she's still laying hints in songs like this. I mean, you can go to songs like Expectations or Less, and you can sort of see her dissatisfaction with the exact type of person that Honeybee is, making a big deal about this guy being. It's like, oh, he's sensitive and he's quiet and he's got all these things. And it's like, oh, these are good things. And it's like, no, it's actually just a flag masking his insecurity. It's not actually a virtue. It's really something that's going to drive them apart. And then you have Maggots for Brains, which, going back on autopilot, and then you go directly into You plus Me equals Heart, which is just another fucking rager of a song. Oh my God, this song is so much goddamn fun. This stretch in the album, man, this is some real fucking like, yeah!
I love the way that Olivia arranges her backing vocals, which is something that else that
Yeah!
I think comes from her theater kid bona fides. It's like
100%.
wanting to layer in vocals that are interesting to listen to
Yes.
individually, not just to create this tangible echo, right? There's so
Hmm.
many moments where the backing vocals are arranged in a way that's meant to accomplish a very specific thing in a very specific moment. It's all really, really, really well put together in terms of its composition. I love the one of my favorite moments of this is not to skip ahead too much, is on The Cure, just that like unraveled in the way that all those little vocal manipulations come in, all those little different vocal layers come through.
Yes.
Oh man, one of my favorite moments of the entire
I
year in music is just listening to those different vocal snippets and realizing that you're listening to a master at work of arranging these vocals.
detail upon detail upon detail is superb. Like, the Olivia's vocal harmonies on here, they are more vocal stems than they are actual accents into the verses. And that, again, it's making these things stick in your head. It's always been what she's good at, and she's never been better at it than she is on here, if you ask me. And couple it with the fact that this is that Again, I would say that right now, this is my favorite record any of the new guard pop girlies have made. I would say that that title previously probably belonged to the most recent Billy record, which I thought was fantastic. But, that was during our hiatus, so we didn't actually get to talk about it. But, Birds of a Feather, fantastic fucking song. This, on the other hand, I will say that what makes Olivia unique, other than her genre blending amongst her peers, is the raw power of her fucking voice, which I think is, I mean, she sounds amazing on this. Like, these are some S plus tier vocal performances. She is belting on this. And I love when people like Billy can work within a set of limitations to kind of hone their aesthetic. Like, I think she's done that so fucking well. But Olivia, man, it just like when it comes to the raw fundamentals, she's got them in spades. And I think her as a performer, she's never been better or more charismatic than on an album like this. Specifically on a song like My Way, which is again the sort of the first real sign where the cracks are starting to show, where you don't have to look a little bit deeper, where Olivia is kind of like, hey, get off my man's coattails, essentially. But the more you listen to this album and the more you're like, hey, I wonder why his perspective isn't in this song anywhere. It seems like she's the only one objecting to the fact that this person seems to be really interested in him. I wonder why that's the case, especially on an album where one of the most gutting lines is something along the lines of, "I used to play this game when I was younger of how many girls would a guy fuck before I'd start crying," which is just like, whoa,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shit.
It speaks to a little bit of that, and I've been here, so I can relate. It speaks
Mm,
to a little bit of that, like insecurity as a young person about sex in specific. The idea that somebody you think is more sexually experienced than you is
yes.
interested in you, then it's only a matter of time before like you've accidentally revealed yourself to be like not in the same world that they're in.
Yeah,
And it's just this little note of that idea of being so fixated on the idea of another person's sexual history. That never really comes up again.
mhm.
But what it does is that that's especially so early on that song, The Cure, creates this great punctuation of it's like, oh, I'm still a little bit in my youth and in my thought pattern, in my bad negative thought patterns about how like I have to get everything right the first time and everything has to be perfect all along the way or it's hopeless. And the truth is always somewhere in the middle of like, yes, there will always be red flags waving in the wind that you should not go anywhere near.
But
But the older that you get, the harder that it's going to be to find that ticks all the boxes on the first day connection that you think you have when you're younger. And The Cure is about maturing through that notion and realizing that, like, oh, I've just got too much of my own to ever be able to fit some other person in over all of the crevices of my life and what I think and what I feel about other people and the problems that I have going on in my own brain, right? Nothing fits perfectly the first time you put it on once you get old enough. And that's a really unique feeling for a young songwriter like Olivia to be exploring, and I think it's done really, really well.
I think what makes it so fascinating to me is that within the context of the song The Cure, which is one of the best songs on this album and one of the best songs of the year for the record, I love everything about this. I love the way that it sounds. I love the way that once the first chorus ends, it fakes you out into thinking that it's going to go bigger way sooner than it actually does. It's a
Oh
really good
man, the
intentional wrong
bridge on
put.
this song.
Oh boy. But
This is
I will
Olivia's best ballad. What I was saying
I
earlier about a stupid song, I wrote
correct.
down this is Olivia's best ballad and then went back and crossed it out.
And the reason why that is, to me, is because this song kind of supposes and kind of builds off of her previous music in a lot of ways, in sort of implying that making personal progress, maturing as a person, is realizing that you have to do a lot of things that you maybe don't want to do. But that also makes a really interesting gray area for instances like this, where Olivia is like, yeah, this is like medicine, and I just have to take it, and it's good for me because, like, that's you are rationalizing your own pain, building your way to something better because that's what you think adults are supposed to do. And what can happen to you while you do that? While you convincing yourself that you're more mature, that you're older, that you've got yourself figured out, and that, yeah, I have to deal with all this stuff, but I'm an adult, and that's what they do is that's a really slippery slope. That is exactly how you become prone to emotional manipulation. That is exactly how people take advantage of you, is that they convince you that the pain and inconveniences that you're going through are normal. And there is a fine line here where Olivia is correct, but that's what makes the songwriting good is that it never comes down on one side or the other. You do not know at this point in the album as to whether or not she's leaning towards one side or the other, especially when you have the precedent of Purple before this, which is a really fascinating song to me because it's basically the metaphor here is that because she's red, he's blue, they come together and then they make purple, and that's how she sees things. But it's basically like once you take away the pageantry of the metaphor, this song is deeply fucked. Like it's about someone coming into your life and irreplaceably changing the way that you view the world. And because Olivia views herself as getting older and dealing with all of these things, she thinks that this is just part of it because there's nobody around to tell you that there's not, that you shouldn't feel this way, that you should have your horizons broadened. And it's difficult to tell what the difference between growth and manipulation can be. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be manipulation that's like specifically like insidious. It just comes from not really understanding or knowing the person that you're actually with, which is what makes the kind of tragedy of this breakup so palpable is that it's preventable and also like preventable in a way that it's just like, oh, this should have never started. Like you all shouldn't have been together to begin with. And that becomes abundantly clear on the lyrical showstopper for me, I think, which is Begged, which like kind of fucked me up, honestly. Like this is a really difficult, challenging song about how, if I had to get on my knees and beg for you to do something for me, even if you did it, the fact that I had to humiliate myself, isn't that a problem? And it's like, oh man, have I been
Yeah,
here.
it is.
Oh man, have I fucking been here. And it's palpable. This is a phenomenal song.
You really feel the tension start to come in on this part of the album,
Hmm.
and which leads perfectly into What's Wrong with Me, which is a dramatic turn that I did not expect from
Did
all
not
this.
have the tone I expected it to have at all.
Because okay, here's where my cynical brain came in. Because even just a few weeks ago, we were talking, and I was
Hmm.
like, man, wouldn't it be cool if they actually got Robert Smith to be on the new album? So I was
Yeah, and
like,
I was like, man, they that would be cool, but they'd never do it.
well, and I was also thinking about as I was listening to Lil Nas X's big debut album while I was taking a walk the other day. It's got that song in there that's got that Elton John feature on it, but it's just
Yeah.
him playing piano. It's not him singing. And so it feels a little bit like, yeah, come on. And I was
Yeah.
worried, like, oh, is Robert just gonna be playing guitar and they, got a feature on there because it was a nice thing to do. But color me so surprised
Oh
and
yeah.
so elated when Robert Smith's backing vocals come in on the chorus of this
Mm.
song. I was like, thank God it's a real duet. Real duets are back, baby.
A real duet, and it is so perfect to get the master of pop melancholy himself for this because it's like this album in its totality is a more tightly structured version of the Cure album Wish. The Cure album Wish, for the record, is an album that bounces back and forth because it's about mania. It's about taking refuge in someone else, but also acknowledging that the fact that you have to take refuge in someone else is a personal shortcoming that you probably shouldn't be super comfortable with. And I mean, What's Wrong with Me in general just has so many cure-ism lines on here. Tried meditation with a bottle of wine being one of my absolute fucking favorites. But just it really nails forward the kind of, the metaphors and the writing about sickness on this album and cures and all of this stuff and, going to the doctor and what have you. And, the doctor in this case is definitely a therapist. And just this is like more than anything, What's Wrong with Me is a Cure song. It is just a 90s Cure song. And frankly, I like it is one of the best pastiches of this that I have ever seen done. Like genuinely, bravo. Fantastic. Fits on the album flawlessly.
Yeah, and then ooh,
This
somehow, some
final
way,
run, man, this
yeah,
is
the album just
wild.
keeps surprising me because then you got ah Less, which is
Less.
just this great. That's the real emotional climax of it is
Yep.
Less, where you're getting this idea of like I just at some point you start to wish that you just didn't care as much. And it's a great feeling to mine for pop music, and a lot of great pop music has done it. This is just another example of that. But man, the most fun I've had on this album is with Expectations. I love this hook
It's
so much. I
great.
love the like bubblegum infusion on this hook that leads into the. I just love her spoken word stuff that she
I
does.
do too. Every time she does it.
I've really gotten into it. I love her flow. And again, it really speaks to her skill as an actress that she can keep pulling all these off and make them all feel
Yeah.
different from each other while still kind of having the same spoken word flow to it
Hmm.
all. But on Expectations, especially, it's like it echoes Bad Idea right in all the
Hmm.
best ways. And it's a great flip of that because now it's, oh, I'm not just going to recklessly give myself away to a sensation again. Am I?
And what are we like? It's Expectations is such a fucking smart song, but precisely because of its sort of thematic malleability, where it's just like you're listening to her talk about this, and it's like the fact that she has these expectations and higher standards, it's like, yes, this is unequivocally a good thing, but it sounds like you're using them as an excuse to be more reckless again. And that sort of balancing act is just like, oh, she's moved forward from where she was. Like she's used her maturity to sort of, take herself further like an adult would, but like a
But she's
child.
going to use all that to get a hookup.
Yeah, and she's basically doing it in order to just like make a different kind of mistake this time. And you're just kind of like there is a tension in this song that makes you kind of root for her to see through the veneer that she's putting over herself. And I think that that's such a phenomenal way to show maturation and growth because you take a look at the album title, the album cover, and just Olivia Rodrigo's trajectory as an artist thus far, and you're like my worry with this, just from the looking at it, is that I was just kind of like, is this going to be a case of kind of Arrested Development where we're just not really going to be able to move on past Guts? Because it seems like that's sort of the pageantry of it. And my dumbass didn't even think that the idea here was that she was parodying the exact idea I was talking about. The idea here is a parody of stagnation, not stagnation. And honestly, that's just really fucking smart. And then you build into Cigarette Smoke, which I think is just a fucking phenomenal closing track. Oh man, it's phenomenal. Like there are certain little tiny stanzas here that are just heartbreaking. I resent you for not being brave. Ugh, fuck. That shit's painful, man. And like just the idea of, give me back my time and I'll give you back your heart. And you're thinking to yourself, it's just like, oh, hun, his heart, you don't have it. You never had it. It's not yours to give back. That's the problem here that's happening with all of this. And he can't give you back that time. It is stewing in the denial of regret. And I mean, relatable.
Sadly, immensely relatable. But I really do think that this is Olivia's best album by a significant margin. I think she's only gotten better.
I do
I think
agree.
her lyricism has only matured. I think her singing has gotten much better on this. I think
I do
her
too.
writing has improved on this, while being able to carry all the things that have made her special in the past forward. Like she's not
Hmm.
lost anything that's drawn me to her music in the past. She's just like refined what already makes her good. because I kept waiting for the moment. Tom the Shadows got me with this one. I kept waiting for Fame Fucker, where I was just like, where is she gonna say something that I just like cannot ignore being the
Yeah.
product of a young person trying a little too hard? But it never happens on this. It
Mm-mm.
never happens.
I really gotta say, I haven't clicked this hard with a mainstream pop album since I think Church's Screen Violence in 2021. Like I enjoy me my art pop and some more avant-garde shit and maybe some more dance pop oriented stuff, but like in terms of mainstream mass appeal records, this is one of the best we've gotten so far this decade. I mean that. Like this is phenomenal. I loved listening to this. I loved unpacking it, and I feel like after listening to it, I genuinely felt better about the prospect of the next generation of pop stars, where I was just like, these gals are all so creative and so different. I mean, like, think about again when I was talking about what pop stars were really supposed to be like kind of 20 years ago before we kind of had the paradigm shift of Taylor Swift in the late 2010s to kind of change and upend what we all thought our idea of what pop stars are and what they are now. But before that paradigm shift existed, a lot of it was very similar. Like though that unattainable goddess status that everybody aimed for, it entailed a kind of uniformity. It entailed a kind
It
of
entailed a race to the top
yes,
for, the ideal form,
yes,
where
and
so many of the pop stars of today, and especially the pop girlies, all feel like they're just working as hard as they can to carve out their own niches, which
mhm.
is so much more interesting to think about and talk about.
Absolutely. Like I have been genuinely worried about the prospect of not having a successor to Hayley Williams in a lot of ways because I do think she is one of the most kind of pivotal pop figures of the century in a very stealth way in how she is consistently rides the line between mainstream and alternative flawlessly without really ever sacrificing her appeal of either. And I'm like, we don't get people like her who can, appeal to your mom and music journalists all at the same time. And now I feel a little bit better knowing that we have people like Olivia Rodrigo out there who will carry the torch and carry it very well because an album like this and an album like Ego Death at a Bachelorette Party, these albums are cousins. They're sisters. They're hanging out together. They're getting drinks down at the bar and they're exchanging stories about how some shit went down.
What I love that Olivia's influences are growing. That
Hmm.
growth is showing in her music because, much love to Billy and Sabrina. Their last two albums did not really suggest a lot of change in influence or like
Hmm.
genre appeal.
They're more about refinement than evolution.
Yeah, this is an evolution from
Hmm.
Olivia, and one that I'm very happy to see, and one that I hope leads to, I'm selfish. I could go for a little new wave revival.
I really could. Like, look, if there's two things I'm never gonna say no to, it's a new wave revival and a dance punk revival. Just give me all of that shit. Like, hey, pop stars, you got to get on the dance punk shit because it's you're gonna miss out. I'm just saying.
Get
But
Genesis Owusu on your album now.
Red Star Woo hit record, baby. But yeah, that is going to close the book today on our two phenomenal pop albums that we got to talk about that get the
Woohoo.
highest possible thumbs up in a year of consistently great music where even if there has been a bad album that I thought would be fun to talk about, I have never been like, oh, I'm gonna replace it with this other worthwhile thing that I want to talk about instead. But like in a year full of great release after great release after great release, this might be one of the best weeks we've had thus far. So, damn, bro. Stream, you seem pretty sad for a girl so in love. That is a very fucking I love the clunkiness of the title, but damn is it hard to say.
It's a good title.
It is. I do really like it.
If you would like to support the show, You could do so by joining our YouTube membership, which will give you access to our Discord server and a couple of exclusive videos. We just put one out talking about Obsession and talking about Backrooms. And we got some more exclusive stuff that we're planning that's going to be coming down the pike. And as always,
As always, folks, rock over London, rock on Chicago. My mayor Muslim, my bagel Jewish, my Christian Dior, Nixon for.
neither of us live in New York, by the way.
Nope.